Welcome. I'm Debbie Epstein-Henry. I'm Vice President of the Forum of Executive Women, and I'm also founder of DEH Consulting Speaking Writing and an executive consultant to Axiom. I'm here today with the distinguished three panelists from the Forum of Executive Women who all sit on the executive committee with me on the board, starting with Lisa Detweiler, who is Managing Director, General Counsel, and CCO of FS Investment Solutions. She's also President of the Forum of Executive Women. We also have today Judy McGrother, President and CEO of The Hill at Whitemarsh, and Sheila Woods Skipper, Judge at the First Judicial District Court of Common Pleas. Welcome, everyone.
Hi, Debbie.
Hey, Debbie.
Hi, Debbie.
Hi.
Hello, thank
We're
you.
here today to discuss the topic, Treading the Glass Cliff, Women Leading in Turbulent Times. And I can't imagine a more fitting time to have this conversation. But I want to start with our panel today is to briefly ask each of you to walk through the highlights of your career. And in doing so, share the biggest challenge you faced professionally and how you work through it. And Lisa, I'll start with you.
Well, thanks, Debbie. And first, I have to say it's an honor to work with Debbie and Sheila and Judy at the Forum of Executive Women. We are promoting women of all levels at the forum, and we're having a lot of fun along the way. So thank you all. I have been a financial services lawyer for 33 years. I spent the first 9 years of my career working with regulatory agencies, followed by law firm, and then followed by in-house positions at both startups and money center banks. And I've had really interesting jobs. I'm very lucky in that regard. I would say my first two jobs working for the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency in Washington, regulator of national banks, and then working as the chief counsel of the Pennsylvania Department of Banking were the jobs that tested me the most. In both of those jobs, we were going through financial crises, failing financial institutions, and had to learn very quickly in those jobs, not just the content and the relevant law, but also how to put teams together, how to hire and manage people, how to handle litigation matters. And I would say that those positions really, as I think about it, really prepared me for the situation that we find ourselves in today. And I think that the skills that win out are hard work, curiosity, and, as a lawyer, a really strong desire to meet my clients' objectives, whether they be external clients or internal clients.
Terrific. And in terms of this climate right now, I think the idea of resilience is one other quality that I know you have, and you really have shown that so much in your leadership of the forum and otherwise. And I just wonder if that quality and any others seem to be particularly resonating with you right now in this climate.
Definitely, resiliency is critically important. None of us knew that we would be in this work from home environment for as long as we've been in it. And I think I'm really proud of the team at the forum who has really persevered through this, but there's no doubt that resiliency is critical, and also some grit.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll get more into those ideas. Judy, same question for you in terms of walking through the highlights of your career and sharing some of the biggest challenges you faced and how you've worked through it.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. It truly is a pleasure to be here and have this opportunity. I have a fairly non-traditional career path. I graduated with a degree in marketing and ended up in public accounting as my first jobs, just because they wanted someone to help them grow their practice. And found out quite quickly in that environment that unless you were a CPA, there wasn't much opportunity for advancement. So I went back to school, working full time, got my CPA, and began doing consulting work, mainly in the medical field, and had an opportunity as I was doing that to bring up the operations of a brand new CCRC, continuing care retirement community, which is what the Hill at White Marsh is, and loved it. And moved forward in that field, had the opportunity to work for one of the largest providers in the country for several years. And so not only had a marketing and finance background, but got a phenomenal operational background. And then when the Hill opportunity came along in 2005, as they were doing a national recruit search, for me, it was absolutely the perfect job. The ability to build an CCRC from the ground up was a dream come true. So that's how I've ended up at the Hill at White Marsh. Through all of my career, I've pretty much been an agent of change at all of the organizations I've worked at, either to help them grow or to help them reposition, help them bring on new lines of revenue. What type of strategy did we need? So I have constantly worked in an environment of change. It is one of the things that motivates me and that I love very much. So in the situation that we're in now, that background has obviously been a tremendous asset for me to draw on. And as we look at where we are right now, managing, we have more than 400 residents, more than 300 staff, and we're in our 28th week of battling the pandemic. We've had to really work at keeping everyone healthy and safe. And so that skill set to, one, develop a strategy, two, communication is of the utmost in a situation like this with all of your stakeholders constantly. You have to develop trust and a feeling of safety, and then the ability to execute. All three of those come together and are really, really important skills to have in this type of situation.
Terrific, Judy. And in terms of that familiar theme you mentioned around being an agent of change and all the different roles that you've played, is there anything in particular that has really served you well for playing that role?
I have to say that probably two mentors that really were significant in my career. I've been lucky enough to have two mentors, and one really was a driving force for me to go back to school and really reevaluate my background and what to do. And the other one was a situation where I became very much aware that I thought I was on track for the C-suite in a position I had, and I was not. And my mentor worked with me to be able to handle that situation, look at the situation very realistically, be positive about it, and to go on to find new opportunities. And I think that situation was really a turning point for me in how to look at things very differently and how to move forward when the situation isn't everything you want it to be or what you hoped it would be, but there's opportunity out there and you can make it very successful.
I love that example because I think particularly now there's so many constraints on people and there's such a variety of how people are faring in this climate. And so the idea of really seeing an adverse situation and capitalizing on it and using it as a way to really develop your career and further your career in a positive way is just, it's a really fitting time to be raising those examples. I hope we have time to get back into that. But I want to turn to Sheila and again ask you that same question and giving us a little context about your background and what has been so much significant to you.
Thank you, Debbie. I hope everyone can hear me. First, I apologize that I cannot be live on video. I am having some technical difficulties, so I am certainly happy to be a part of this panel along with Debbie, Lisa, and Judy.
Sheila, if I could interject just for a moment, if you could get as close to the mic as possible, and I know it's unfortunate you can't join us by video because of technical problems, but you could just get as close as possible and then answer the question. That's great. We're waiting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry if you couldn't hear me again. I apologize for the technical difficulties, and I'm happy to be here by phone today. First, just a little context and background, I guess, for me, because I come from a different angle, because I've always been in the public sector, dealing with government and acting as a public servant. I have been on the bench as a judge for 22 years. I am a lifelong resident of Philadelphia. I did all my schooling here. I was born and raised in the neighborhoods and grew up here in Philadelphia. I've never left. All of my jobs have been here. I currently, as I indicated, have been a judge here for about 22 years in the Court of Common Pleas in Philadelphia. I am the past president judge of the Court of Common Pleas, having served my 5-year term that ended approximately almost 2 years ago now. I was also the chair of our administrative governing board, which is the administrative board of our court that oversees and manages and makes policies for the court, all divisions of our court. Even prior to that, however, I was also the supervising judge of the criminal division. So I think all of these different administrative positions, and the fact that I also served as a judge and did the daily grunt work of a judge, gives me a unique perspective. Some of the highlights I find, of my career of a judge was helping in the establishment of our criminal mental health court, which was established to assist those who have been arrested for crimes, who were experiencing mental health issues, where we could provide support for them, put them in appropriate treatment, and give them appropriate supervision so that they don't become repeat offenders and go through that revolving door of prison. I also created the Elder Justice Resource Center here in City Hall. And that was an opportunity to help elder citizens, elder defendants, those who are dealing with elder issues, navigate the court system, provide resources and information. So those are two of the things of my career that I'm most proud of. In terms of challenges, anytime that you are a judge and you're working with a group of individuals who are also judges and also independently elected officials, you're going to have challenges. You have differences in leadership styles. You have differences in information or approaches. People look at me because I have a pretty quiet, unassuming demeanor. And that is also my leadership style. I try to be inclusive. I try to corral the many different factions of court and court staff and our justice system to work together as partners to find common ground so that we can build coalitions and move forward to make things work. Our goal is to make sure that there is access to our courts, access to justice, and being able to balance that responsibility and duty to provide access with making sure that we also are creating engagement not only for those that we serve, but for our justice partners as well. And so I think my ability to do that probably has been my greatest plus, and will continue to move with that. My whole philosophy has always been access, transparency, and justice. And I continue to do that even as we move through this difficult time that we're dealing with.
And I have to say, sitting on the board with you, I have personally benefited and experienced those strengths of yours. And I see Lisa and Judy nodding that we all share that and experience of that with you. So terrific. We're already getting questions in, so I want to encourage the audience to submit questions, and I'll intersperse those questions throughout with my own questions. So really want to encourage participation and address the questions of the audience. Lisa, I'm going to start with you on how can we, as women, mitigate unfair expectations that are often put upon us in professional settings, and also how to juggle our personal life in those expectations?
That's a great question. I think any of us on this panel would tell you that work-life balance is always a challenge, and it evolves depending on where you are in life. I think I think organization is something that really helps, and having clear goals and clear priorities. Does that answer your question?
Sure. I'm hoping you solve the problem for me. I'm going to get you over here and have you help me out with these challenges.
It's a constant challenge.
Yeah, it is. But also the issue around professional expectations, that there's a lot of discussion around women having sort of a disproportionate burden of perfectionism on them, projected both by colleagues as well as themselves. Any thoughts on that?
I think it is important to address those situations as they arise and try to dispel those expectations with an eye toward having a level playing field at all times. And that is hard, because you have to talk to supervisors about potentially disparate treatment, but you have to discuss it. You have to raise it, and you have to continue to professionally push for a level playing field.
Right. And I think the answer here is clearly not hiding it, because, a lot of people feel they have to hide their kids and hide their interests outside of work, and that's not sustainable long term. I absolutely agree with you. We're getting a lot of questions, which is terrific. And Judy, I want to turn to you on one of them, because I know you're so focused on innovation. And the question is, where do you get your inspiration from when you're looking for innovative ideas to bring to your work and your organization?
Well, when you're looking to be innovative, you always have to listen. You have to have really good, I call it radar, for what's going on around you. You have to rely heavily on your team. They will give you a tremendous amount of information, and communication with them constantly as you look at everything. You also have to be mindful of what's going on in the marketplace with your product and with your industry. But you really have to stay connected to all of your stakeholders. And if you keep those lines of communication open, I have found that as you evaluate an operation, determine what the strengths and weaknesses are, and then make sure that you have a strategy. Where do you want to go? You usually can be pretty creative during that process, but it definitely is a team effort. If you think you're going to be creative and manage change in an isolated environment, it's not going to happen.
It's absolutely right. I think your focus on listening is critical too. And I talk a lot about knowing your audience. You can't just impose innovation in an environment where you don't understand and appreciate the environment and how the actors will react to it. So I think having that note of caution around listening and really knowing the environment in which you're making these recommendations is got to be critical. We have another question that's particular to Sheila, and so I want to bring you in here, which is that what's your advice for young, aspiring female leaders in how they toe the line between being pleasant and friendly and easy to work with, as you described yourself, but also being confident and successful in getting what you want?
I think it really is all about how you present yourself, your willingness to be open to other ideas, to include others in the conversation, and it's really that really to listen, because I think that you can be decisive in your decision making, you can be inclusive in your decision making, and still be civil about the conversation. It is okay for people to disagree. It's the manner in which that disagreement is expressed. So if you encourage people to voice their opinions, if you encourage them to be involved with making the decision or making recommendations as decisions are being made, and even if you disagree, if you express that disagreement to them in a way where they know at least they have been heard, that you have listened and considered that thought, I think people tend to respect you for that a lot more, and to understand that they can come to you again and again with ideas and thoughts, and you won't be dismissive about them. You'll consider them and then make a decision that's best based on all the information that you have.
Terrific. And we're talking in generalities here about women generally, but I want to take a step back and turn to you, Lisa, again. You're running the Forum of Executive Women as the president. That's not your day job, of course. That's just what you do in between for fun. It's an organization focused on building a community of women in power and women supporting women and elevating junior women and all the important aspects of women in leadership. But women vary, of course, in how they manage these issues. Can you talk about some of the work that you've been focused on with respect to women supporting women and how the forum can be instrumental in creating these opportunities that we're exploring?
Yeah, thanks, Debbie. I think it's just so critically important, particularly now, more important than ever, that women help each other and they empower each other, they promote each other, and they applaud one another's successes. At the forum, where we are really so pleased to have 500 members of the community in this area from all different industries, for-profit, not-for-profit, government. We're really focused on 4 things. We're focused on accelerating the diversity and inclusion efforts of the forum, both in terms of membership, in terms of representation on the committees within the forum. And we are focused on a membership drive, and we had our largest group of new members in our last calendar year. And this year we are going to top that, and we're going to bring in 100 more new members to the forum. And part of that is a reflection of the fact that we're so lucky here in Philadelphia to have so many wonderful women in great positions across all sorts of industries. And we want to include them all in the forum. The other objectives that we're working on a strategic plan to really position the forum for the future and make the forum accessible to as many people as possible. We adopted a year ago a model of engaging an advisory board made up of men and women to help us do this. And we're so appreciative to the advisory board for that. And then our final goal really is around advocacy. So in the past, the forum has engaged in advocacy around diversity of gender on public company boards. We're now expanding that advocacy to include disclosure of the diversity of public company boards. As you all may know, California recently enacted legislation that will require companies headquartered in California to disclose by the end of 2021 the diversity makeup of their board members. And so we're working on an advocacy project around that issue because we think it is really important that there be transparency around that disclosure. But I think that there's so many other ways that the forum promotes women and other examples. There's so many examples of women supporting women relating to the forum. We offer a wonderful mentoring program for women who are earlier in their career. And we have members of the forum who mentor those younger women. And the program is just phenomenal. And we get many accolades for that program. And we also promote forum members to serve on public and private company boards. And we've had a lot of success in our members getting on to those boards. And overall, we really want to serve as a resource to the community for experts in a whole lot of areas. That's the makeup of the forum. And we are supporting all our members as we continue to have these different avenues for promotion.
Thanks, Lisa. I want to pick up on the point around mentoring because it's something that you mentioned. Obviously, we do at the forum, but also Judy mentioned how that was so pivotal in her career. We just got a question, Judy. What advice would you have for a young woman seeking a mentor early on in their career, and how important is it to seek a mentorship? And before you answer that, Judy, I just want to pause and put a note in where some people are more familiar with the term mentoring, but often the term being used now is also sponsorship. And that's based on research that sponsors are different from mentors. Mentors are not always powerful. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. But a sponsor is somebody who's willing to use his or her power to back somebody who's high potential. And why that's important is sometimes mentorship has a causal relationship with increased success or increased promotion or comp, but not always. And a sponsor is really more of that power broker who's going to influence your career. So I wanted to ask you, Judy, to answer the question around mentoring with that context of really somebody who's influential like it's been in your career.
Yes, I think it's critical. I guess probably my mentors were sponsors also, just as the way the relationship worked. But it is really critical, I think, for someone to see if they can find that. And I think you can, but I think you have to be, whatever organization you're in or whatever structure you're in, you need to be open. You need to be willing to learn things. You need to be willing to try different things in your organizations, because you want to have the sponsor or whoever the structure is that you're working within see that you're willing to learn. And I do believe if individuals are willing to do that, try some different things, maybe volunteer for the project that is a little bit out of your comfort zone, it does create an environment of learning. And when you do that, you will find that others in the organization that do have more responsibility and are in a position to be able to help you will start to notice you and speak up and start to develop a relationship with you. And it's a step-by-step. It doesn't happen overnight, but it is something that you need to be on the lookout for. And you will also find people that as you start to work together on different levels that you naturally work well with, you're attuned with, and don't hesitate to reach out to those individuals, ask for advice, ask for help, anytime, any suggestion from them, and engage them in conversation and discussion. And I think if people will do that, they will find that they will find people that can obviously serve as both mentors and sponsors for them in their organization.
Great, Judy. And I think you're probably too modest to say it, but having watched you up and close, I can share that a lot of being an effective mentee or sponsee is delivering the value, being that person who's a real asset. So that senior person wants to take an interest in you. It ends up being a symbiotic relationship where you're both really benefiting. And I think that's really important from the mentee standpoint in trying to identify prospective mentors or sponsors to really see how you can volunteer and roll up your sleeves and be helpful. We have a question for you, Sheila. One of our audience members is asking, in a virtual environment right now, she works in higher ed and in a tech field where she's often the only woman, and she's noticing that she's not getting invited to some of the online meetings. She's told about them afterwards. Sometimes they say, oh, well, we know you're overwhelmed with the kids, taking, homeschooling at home. And while yes, it is overwhelming, she certainly is very good at multitasking, and most importantly, doesn't want to be patronized and for these decisions to be made without her. I know you've had enormous success in the area of inclusion, not just at the forum with our diversity committee, but also beyond, being a leader, a woman of color in the courts. Can you share some recommendations you have for this young woman about how to make sure she's included?
So the first thing I think is you can't be shy about going to whoever is formulating these meetings to let you know that you want to be included and that you have something to contribute. I think sometimes as African American women, and particularly those in leadership, we question whether or not we can bring our true, authentic selves into such situations. But if you're not present in the room, then you really can't make an impact. And that's what we want to do. We want to make impact. So I think you have to muster up enough courage to either, if you don't have a mentor or a sponsor at the place that where you are, then you have to take it upon yourself and reach out and say, look, I understand that this meeting has been going on and that one. I really want to be included in the next meetings. I'm used to multitasking. It's not an imposition at all. I expect to be there. It's something that is in the realm of my job, in the realm of my expertise, and please include me as we move forward. And I will continue to do that until somebody listens, until you find that you are, in fact, included, because you have the right to do so.
What I'll add, Sheila, thanks for that. I think those are really important comments. And recently I was hearing an interview of somebody from the head of people, or I don't know his precise role, but one of the top people at Salesforce, and he talked about one of the more important things he's focused on is how to run a good online meeting. And a lot of how online meetings are run right now in this virtual environment is an indication of how inclusive your workforce is. Think about it. Who's invited to the meeting? Who is not? Who speaks up? Who doesn't? Who takes too much time? Is it well managed? All the aspects of an online meeting is almost a microcosm of your workplace. And I thought it was a really interesting point. So this issue around inclusion in that space is critical. Lisa, we have a question for you on work-life balance. And the question is, how do you manage to do all the incredible time-consuming work that you do and also do good for the community? And I'm excited to hear the answer to this, because I'm not going to allow you to say you don't sleep, because that won't help us. But I need to know the answer to this as well.
It really is just organization. It really is. And delegation and prioritization. I try to focus on those things that must get done versus the nice to haves. And also try to stay focused. As I mentioned earlier, we have 4 key goals at the forum. Not different from the workplace where there are another bundle of goals. I try to stay focused on those goals. And, the other part is great teams. The team at the forum is second to none. The team that I have at work, second to none. And so the importance of building teams that work together well and that are all also trying to achieve those same objectives. So it is really what allows all of that to happen.
Thanks. And just one follow-up I think you're particularly suited to answer is someone is asking for specific resources on women in leadership. And I know we have our upcoming forum Women in Leadership report out. So I wanted to have you respond on that.
Yeah, thanks, Debbie. Yes, we are about a month away from issuing with our partner PwC our annual Women in Leadership report. I have a couple of sneak peeks at the information that we'll hear about at the end of October. And I'd like to encourage everybody on the line to join us on October 21st. We are thrilled at the forum to have a wonderful keynote speaker, Ann Robinson, who is the general counsel and managing director at Vanguard, a very accomplished lawyer, fabulous woman. And I invite everybody to join us for that. At that same meeting, we'll be unveiling the Women in Leadership report. And we've got some good news. We've got some progress that we still need to make. We are seeing preliminarily an increase in the number of 30% companies. So those are public companies in our region here in Philadelphia who have 30% or more diverse members of their board. And so that's a positive, really positive development. We also are seeing that there are fewer companies that have no women on their boards. And I think that is also a really positive development. And we are seeing only about 20 to 30% of those companies actually include diversity numbers in their public filings. So that's the area that I mentioned earlier where the forum wants to take a more active role in advocacy and so that we can get full transparency from public companies into that data. But we're really excited. We've been doing, this is our 18th year of producing the Women in Leadership Report, which is really a scorecard on how we're doing in this region with respect to diversity overall. And we're excited to hear all of the results in the report later in October.
Terrific. Thank you so much. I want to switch gears a little bit and ask you, Judy, you've been at the epicenter of this crisis, working and leading the organization that you lead. And I wonder what has really helped you as a leader. And you and I have discussed in particular that it's not necessarily as a woman leader here. You just have talked with respect to leadership generally. So can you get a little bit more into that? What has really helped you through leading in this crisis, and what specific skills, whether they're gender related or not, have been critical for you?
Well, I think during this crisis, it definitely has been crisis management on steroids for weeks on end. And as we looked at it and start to step into this, one of the most important things for us was our culture and our teamwork. And it was one of the biggest strengths that our organization had behind it. And I have to say, as the CEO, the inaugural CEO of the Hill at White Marsh, one of the things that was most important to us in 2007 when we opened was to define our culture and what would it be, because that's what we needed to give our organization heart. You can be a finely, tuned machine and do a great job, but where is the heart and the passion? And so we have worked really hard since we've opened to create a really strong culture and a really dedicated team. And as we move forward with this crisis, our team has stepped up to the plate on every single level. And so it has taken a very, very difficult situation for people, not only professionally, but personally. We're asking individuals to come into a workplace where they could be exposed and they're going home to their families at night. And you need a really strong culture and a really strong team to be able to do that. The other thing that has been really important is communication. We learned early on, and I've learned this before, but communication to all of your stakeholders constantly. We had daily stand-up meetings. I did videos twice a week for residents and our staff. We probably killed about 42 trees in the paper that went out. We never turned down a phone call from a resident, a family, a concerned person. And so all of our team, and we encouraged our managers and our supervisors to go back every day and talk to their team members. What were the issues? What was happening personally as well as professionally? And the communication had to be constant for people to establish a level of trust and that they were in a safe environment. And as we were able to do that, that was probably the most critical thing. Obviously, we had to have a great strategy and we had to execute, but the communication was the glue that really made it all work.
Yeah, I can't imagine how important that was in that environment. And I think because we don't have the benefit of in person, we really all have to discipline ourselves to over communicate, because otherwise there's just an invisibility that's there. So Sheila, a question for you from the audience is whether there's someone in particular who inspires you, whether it be because of their innovative ideas or leadership styles or otherwise. Who would it be and why?
Wow, that's a really great question, because there are so many people who have provided inspiration for me. But I have to start really, frankly, with my mother, who died last year. But my mother really was a go-getter, always involved in the community, always reaching out and helping, providing leadership to school communities, to people in our community. And she inspired me to do the same. But in terms of judges, Justice Juanita Kidd Stout, of which our Criminal Justice Center is named after, was always an inspiration. As a young DA, I would go into her courtroom, and she was like a Southern mother. And, she would call you sidebar and say, and she would give you a little lecture about, why you should do X, Y, and Z. She was a stickler for the pen. If you filed a document or something that was incorrect and the grammar was wrong, she would put red pen marks all over it. And then I also consider Michelle Obama to be an inspiration because she is innovative. She performed her role as First Lady in a manner that was not overwhelming in terms of, taking credit away from her husband. But she had her own insights, her own missions, her own projects, and her own commitments that she followed through with. And so, those are just some of the people. But, I listen and I watch and I observe many people and utilize some of the talents, some of the mechanisms that they developed to lead, and some of the inspiration that they provide others to move forward. And I encourage everyone to do that.
Thanks, Sheila. And if those of you have not yet caught Michelle Obama's new podcast, I would commend it to you. It's just one new iteration of her voice and her latest voice, and it's really powerful and also really entertaining and thought-provoking. So I would definitely recommend that. I want to, before we conclude, Lisa, we have one more question from the audience, if you could quickly address, and then we will wrap up. From a legal perspective, how can women protect themselves and document any injustices that happen in the workplace? I know you're not an employment lawyer, but just speaking generally in terms of practical advice.
Well, I think you hit it. You hit it on the head, Debbie. The important points are to engage with your HR department and make them aware of what you're experiencing, and keep notes of in real time of what you might be experiencing. But I think it is important to make the appropriate people, such as HR, aware of any issues that you are experiencing. Which is hard, and as Sheila said earlier, you have to muster up the courage. But it's really important to do that.
Terrific. And the way I'd like to conclude is to have a parting message from each of you. And if you could each take this opportunity to provide one last piece of advice or underscore one message from today's discussion that you want to highlight, something that's really integral to being a successful woman leader. And I'll start with you, Sheila.
Okay. So my parting message is this: recognizing that we are in a very changing landscape right now due to the pandemic. Some people say it's just COVID. I say, particularly from a court system perspective, there really are three pandemics, and that would be COVID, along with racial inequality and gun violence that has, infiltrated our city during this time of shutdown. So I encourage everyone to be inclusive, to respond to the changes, to not shy away from the challenges, diversity, equity, and inclusion, to look at both internal and external cultures of implicit and explicit bias as we look at the glass ceiling. But more importantly, I think it's important that you continue to create and strengthen your pipeline, invest in an upward movement, and champion yourself and the cause that you and the causes that you feel are important. And don't be afraid. There was a good friend of mine who used to say, don't be afraid to bring a sister up where you are. Want for yourself what you want for your sister. And so while we all are competitive in our nature, what we have and what we want for others is not necessarily different, because someone else propelling to the top will be an encouragement for you, and it also will be an example for others. So I encourage that, and that recognizing that change really does start with developing, analyze, and championing a cause, and ensuring that your leadership is willing to make the change. So best of luck to all of you.
Thank you, Sheila. And Judy, tough act to follow. Apologies for that, but same question for you.
Thank you, Debbie. That is. But I would say never pass up the opportunity to learn or to get out of your comfort zone, because it will always keep you moving forward. Also, whatever size organization you're in, whether it's a small business or a large corporation, always concentrate on the culture and make sure, do whatever you can in that organization to create a culture of opportunity for everyone and an inclusive culture. As a leader, you set a tone, and people do watch. And if you do it and you set that tone in your area or your department, others will see that. Others will follow. And so you need to be a great example as you do that in whatever situation you're in. I also will remind everybody that make sure you've got a great reputation, because you're in total control of it, and that's all you really have. And my last words are from Walt Disney. And Walt says, if you can dream it, you can do it. And I totally believe in that.
Oh, wonderful, Judy. And Lisa, my apologies again. Now you've got to follow two of them. Same question, Lisa.
Okay. Well, first, I would be remiss if I did not mention that last week, Jane Fraser was appointed CEO of Citigroup, one of the largest banks in the world. And she's the first woman to hold a position of one of the money center banks. And this is a huge and important development, and one that, I think we should all be really happy about. I think that it will be really incredible to watch her run Citicorp. So I just would be remiss if I didn't mention that. And then I think, just to follow up on what we talked about a little earlier, it's so important for women and men to look around their organizations and their networks and to really bring other people to the party. Help people fulfill their goals and their professional dreams. And I just think it is so critical to what we do every day.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And I'm going to dare make a final comment after each of the three of your inspiring remarks today. And that is to add the advice of taking smart risks. A lot of us are afraid to put ourselves out there. And Judy shared a story about how adversity for her ended up being a pivotal moment in her career to really propel it forward. And I too have faced some really significant challenges, and all of the times I've pushed myself to take risks, it's really, I wouldn't say they've all come through in the right way for me, but many of them have. And it's been the most rewarding aspect of my career when I've been willing to take that risk. Sheila talked about being courageous. Lisa talked about women supporting women. These have all been critical things in my career, but being able to go out of my comfort zone, like Judy talked about, those are the things that have really been instrumental in my career. As well as these women and the Forum of Executive Women, I'm honored to be on the board and vice president and be sharing the stage with these three amazing women, Lisa, Judy, and Sheila. So thank you to all of you for your friendship and your colleagueship. I also want to thank the Philadelphia Innovation Fest for hosting this wonderful discussion today, and the Forum of Executive Women. If you want to learn more about us, please visit us on our website. and good luck to you. We hope that this has been helpful. Thanks again.